Hi, thanks for joining us today. I apologize for us not being able to be live streamed this afternoon. Google Hangout just didn't cooperate. So here we are. We're going to do a recording so everybody can still hear these great conversations with our guests today. I'm Faith Rothberg. I'm the CEO of College Recruiter, the leading interactive career-related media company helping college students find internships and recent grads find entry-level jobs. You can reach me on Twitter at entry-level-job. Today's Bias Leadership webinar is the third in a series of honest diversity webinars, conversations that we're hosting here at College Recruiter, and our guests today are Janine Truitt and Steve Levy. Janine is the Chief Innovations Officer of Talent Think Innovations, a talent management consulting firm dedicated to helping startups and medium businesses focus on developing smart, innovative talent strategies, policies, and cultures that value talent and put them first. She is the chief blogger at Aristocracy of HR, a blog she created to discuss triumphs, blunders, and best practices of talent acquisition. She can be reached at on Twitter at I have a hard time with this one. Cesarina of HR. That's CZARINAOFHR. Welcome, Janine.
Thank you, Faith.
And we have Steve Levy. He's the founder of Recruiting Inferno Consulting. He's a talent acquisition leader, workforce planner, hands-on recruiter, talent community builder, and populating magician in any technology-laden sector. He can be reached on Twitter at Levy Recruits. That's LEVYRECRUITS. And welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Faith.
So, we're a little punchy, it's a little late, but here we go. Let's start with our first question. And Janine, what is the responsibility of today's leaders with regard to race relations in their companies?
I think their responsibility is to be as transparent about what's going on as possible. I think we're in a time where your employees appreciate that transparency and they want to be sure that they're working for an employer that kind of has the better, I guess, an all-encompassing hope for humanity, not just the workforce, but just that they care about people in general. And I think when leaders don't address these things and they allow their employees to come with these things on their shoulders and in their heads every day, and they don't address it, I think that it kind of leaves an opportunity on the table to open up conversation between the employees and build trust.
You know, let me, I don't mean to turn this into a political discussion, but here in New York, we have a kind of unusual personal relationship with Donald Trump. And we remember just a few days ago when in, I believe it was New Hampshire, Trump, as a potential leader of his party and as a potential leader of the United States, did not address certain unfounded bias statements by a person in the audience. Now, whether you subscribe to the notion, because this is America, you can subscribe to the notion that our president may or may not be a citizen or may not be of Christian Judeo background. The fact of the matter is that leaders have a responsibility to, as Janine says, the greater good, and it means being factual, being honest, being articulate, and being able to be on some level, I believe, the moral compass of an organization. And there's a saying in the fishmonger business that the fish stinks from the head. Well, the fish also leaks from the head, and I think that's not a particularly bad metaphor for how leaders should or should not address race issues. Janine?
Unfortunately, I think I see a lot more PR moves than I see genuine moves by leaders. So, usually when you see them speak up about it, it's not because there's a genuine wish to do so. It's because their board has said, you know what, maybe we should make a statement, or somebody in the organization said, maybe we should make a statement and you should say this. But they don't get that it comes across canned. You know when it's genuine, you know when it's not. And I see a lot of that positioning more so than this that I'm seeing going on really hurts me. And I really feel a way about it. And I wanted to share it with you guys in the case that it may open up dialogue that I haven't seen.
Are you sort of saying that many a leader will kowtow to shareholder value more than social good or social causes?
It's all about the bottom line. I mean, not every company. There are certainly some companies that still care about the people, but I think by and large you'll find that they're more concerned about whether their stocks will go down or whether people will continue to patronize their establishments more so than the greater good. It's unfortunate, but true.
I almost think that on some level, the companies that truly do a great job with doing the right thing aren't the ones that are going to be standing at the top of the mountain crowing about how great they are. Like in HR and recruiting, people who openly refer to themselves as rock stars usually are more like junior high school band members who just learned to pick up the instrument the week before, but they've have the motions down pat, but they simply have no concept of how to make music.
Well, yeah, I think with companies, the rock stars are the individuals, and then you get the companies that are best in class, which drives me insane, like whatever that means. But when you really peel away the layers, they're not best in any class in my book.
So you guys, here's our second question, and you've kind of started to answer it already, so we could kind of keep going in this vein. So when it comes to diversity, are the companies then really practicing what they preach, or is something else really going on?
Well, the thought that I was about to come back to you with, Janine, was I kind of get a perverted joy out of watching companies tell you that they're the top company for African Americans, the top company for Hispanic, top company. They always seem to focus on a certain group at the and I can't think of the word, rather than looking at the overall mobility movement, and it just seems canned. It's lovely. It's lovely that companies make a concerted effort to focus on addressing employment needs, mobility needs of a certain category of people. But it almost always seems as if they're like you said, doing it for more PR things, because if they really did it right, they couldn't give a rat's arse about whether they were on a list or not.
Correct. I mean, I think, and we mentioned this, and I mentioned this on the last webinar, it's the act of being reactive versus proactive. And in many cases, it's when your hand's been slapped, it's when some government authority has said you have to do X, Y, Z, that now everybody's rushing to now implement a diversity and inclusion strategy or protocol. Whereas, when you build your business, that should have been part of it anyway. And so, like, for me, I respect you much more if that was part of your mantra to begin with, rather than something that you added on because your hand was slapped or because you needed to do it. It's the best possible thing. There's studies after studies after studies about how diverse teams just work better. They're more productive. They churn out more. There's more innovation. And despite all those studies, people still don't seem to get the fact that this is something that they should be dedicated to.
You know what's funny? I don't know if there's a single MBA program or MBA program that teaches talent, that teaches recruiting, that teaches the actual process and practice of creating a heterogeneous environment. It's all high-level theories. It's Hertzbergian, it's Maslow's, it's things like that. But I think one of the failures is the path to the CEO is more often than not going through the finance route. And there are some great finance leaders who are great people. But when it becomes an issue of balance sheet, health of the balance sheet, and pun practically intended, the issue of diversity is often whitewashed away. I'm able to do that after being up for all these hours, and I apologize for the great FDNY driving by. But fabulous Fire Force. Faith.
All right. Well, so here's our next question, and Janine, you could start with this. How have you seen biased leadership manifest itself in the organizations that you have worked for?
Easy, girl. Easy.
So it kind of works where, let's just say, for instance, you have high-performing teams, and every performance review time, there are promotions that take place. And every time there's a promotion to management, somehow, some way, your high-performing, diverse employees are never making it across that leadership corridor, I call it. It's very monochromatic, very gender chromatic, and nobody can seem to infiltrate this circle. There's a force at the top. I don't think that this is something that a lot of people haven't seen. I don't think it's just me, but it's when you see things like that, when you as an employee come with the best of intentions to do the best that you can in a job, and you can't seem to get past this barrier to leadership or to even another role, whether it's lateral or upward mobility, something about that whole phenomenon says to you, what is it? You want to be somewhat introspective about it. And so you look to your performance first before anything else. And you say, okay, let me look at my performance. Is my performance up to snuff? Am I doing all that I need to? You have a discussion with the right people. No, you're great. You're fantastic. We love your work. And so that you check that off the list and you say, okay, fine. And so you look, and here comes another review session. You say, I'm going to lay low on it this year. Let's wait till next year. Let's see. And you get to next year, and it's the same thing again. The same people getting promoted, many times not even the most productive people in the company. And so then you sit with yourself and you said, okay, check off their performance again. What do they look like? Do they look like me? Do they sound like me? Do they speak like me, walk like me? No. Well, maybe there's something more at play here. And 9 times out of 10, you're not wrong about that assumption, although people will have you think that you are wrong about that assumption. But you know what you know after you've checked off those boxes for yourself, what's going on. And that, for me, is how that plays out.
I consider myself fortunate that it was by sheer dumb happenstance that I began my career substantively at Pitney Bowes in the mid '80s. And Pitney Bowes was, and I've lost track, so I can't say it still is. But for all the time that I was associated with the company, very, very progressive when it came to diversity. Not just filling categories, but taking down barriers for everyone. Our mahogany row was as diverse as it could have been at the time, considering the number of people that were in there. I mean, you could always substitute one person in and out, male, female, black, white, what have you. It was pretty darn good, not just at the top level, but at the -1 level, -2 level. They did a damn good job. And, part of it was because they hired the best possible people. I will forever remember, and I wish I knew if this lovely gentleman was still alive, a guy named Gus Stepp. And if anybody out in the audience is involved in the diversity movement, knows the name Gus Stepp, S-T-E-P-P, you'll just know what kind of incredible man he was. And he told me, he said, I have no choice as to the color of my skin. The only thing I have as a choice is my performance. And that resonated with everybody. It pushed it down. We didn't have to talk about diversity goals because it was readily apparent. We didn't have to talk about the right person for the job. We didn't have to talk about heterogeneity because it was always there. And I know it started with the CEO, and again, I don't know if he's still alive, George Harvey. But I know I spoke with him, and I know he was so sincere, and he felt, that a diverse organization was simply the best possible thing for the company. And Janine, this was in the early 1980s. I mean, that was a long time ago. And also at Pitney Bowes is, we had the fortune to have a lovely woman as a member of our board, Eleanor Holm Norton. Now, the thing with Eleanor is, and this goes to leadership a little higher up, is boards of directors. For the longest of time, I believe corporate America felt there were only like 30 qualified, African American or Hispanic, Latino people who were qualified to be on boards. I can only imagine how many solicitations Eleanor got to be on boards of directors, and part of it was that people in corporations have such a tunnel vision, and there's such a follow the leader mentality. It's like we all knew that the bane of any heads of HR existence back when Jack Welch was CEO of GE was him appearing on Fortune or Forbes magazines, because they knew the next day the CEO was going to come down saying, "Why aren't we doing this?" It's the same thing with diversity. The irony is, in terms of the concept of diversity, there haven't been a whole lot of really new ideas. It's the same recycled mentality and focus decade after decade. I mean, if anything needs disruption now, Janine, it's diversity, and diversity and leadership. I'm sorry for running on, but you don't have froth on this.
Mean, again, it comes down to putting the right people in the right places, especially leadership. Unfortunately, there's a certain pedigree for each of the diverse demographics that companies have an expectation for. So it's like, you're a black woman, you want to move up the ranks. Well, be open to mentorship, be open to these steps that you have to go up that maybe your white counterparts don't have to go up. And don't try to skip or pass go and collect $200 while you're at it. And so it's a rule book that they have at the very top. It's not a rule book that gets shared for the person like myself or other people that try to rise the ranks. We don't know the game. You get in the game, get thrown into it, and then you start to figure out what your place is in it. And it becomes frustrating, and it's something that has to change. And I don't think it means necessarily that you have to have one or more of something else in leadership. I think it just comes down to, if you put the right people in leadership, they know what to do. White, black, Hispanic, they just know what's right to do. It has to do with people, not so much the color or the pieces that make them up. And I think that's what people are missing. They just want the easy fix. You know what? If we put one Hispanic guy in leadership and one black woman in leadership, and we have one of this and one of that, we're good. We match what this thing should look like. And it's like, but if you put the wrong Hispanic leader, the wrong African American leader, you still end up with the same issues. So it's a change of mindset, really.
I forget his name, but a few weeks back, the fellow who was I believe the CSO of CSX, the railroad conglomerate, was appointed to be the CEO. Help me, was it United or American Airlines? I wish I should have thought about this ahead of time. This fellow is an operational genius. And what he did, to be able to operationally to improve dramatically improve the operational effectiveness of a railroad, that's how you make money. And he was brought in to be the new CEO, and it's either United or American Airlines. 15 minutes, big news, and now it's been forgotten. So it's ironic. The companies, it was a big deal. The big deal piece, when it's done right, is shrinking up. I look at that as a little bit of progress. I don't know. But, here's an interesting thing, Janine. How did you and I get involved in this discussion of race relations? How do we have two people of seemingly different backgrounds, scarily enough, think very much alike on this? Have you ever given thought to that?
No, I think it could be a peculiar thing, but I still come back to that whole premise of people being people at the core. Like, if you strip away the fact that you're a Jewish man and I'm a black woman or whatever, people are people. Oh, you didn't know? I think people are people. I think what we miss a lot of times in these conversations is being open and being able to empathize if you don't even understand. Like, if you physically just can't understand what my plight is as a black woman, just being open to hearing it, ingesting it, and empathizing with that kind of thing. I think that speaks volumes. There's so much combative talk back and forth because everybody wants to be heard on the subject and understood, but there's not enough listening. I think when I listen to one another, we tend to agree, which works nicely, but people are just really angry and combative. And in many cases, they're very much right to be angry. I mean, I'm angry about a lot of things, but I'm still open to hearing other people's, thoughts, perceptions on things because it matters.
I don't think I've ever told you this, but it was a long time that we had spoken, we had heard each other talk on webinars, a long time before we ever met. And honestly, I didn't have any preconceived notion of what you looked like. I had no idea. All I know is I was listening to your ideas. And I was reading your writings. And it all just resonated. Is there some, and that's what it was. And, when I saw you, it was fine. I'd give a rat's ass what you looked like. I just liked you.
Right. Yeah. Which is interesting because, like last week we spoke about the hiring process and that kind of thing. And, oddly enough, names, people want to make assumptions based on names. And I can't tell you how many times, because my maiden name is Dennis. So you just have no clue when you hear Janine Nicole Dennis, what you're getting, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've been for interviews and I'm sitting out there and they're like, Janine Dennis, and I'm like,
where's the
right
wasp?
here.
Where's
and
the
they're
wasp?
like, oh, were you waiting for Shaniqua? It's like, it's interesting. You conjure in their heads.
You realize I'm going to have to call you that now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, was I not supposed to have that name? Was I not supposed to have credentials? So, like, even things like that, it's like, why should that even be going on still? Like,
and you know what?
Yeah.
For the same reason, it's the implicit bias that is built in society that is not corrected enough. It's just not corrected. In business, in 2015, we're letting people get away with thinking and saying outlandish things, and it's not my problem. I'll let someone else take care of it. I mean, but diversity is something that everybody has to get involved in to solve the problem.
The problem is the system. I mean, it's embedded in the system, and so, like, for instance, if you're a federal contractor, and you know this, Steve, and somebody doesn't self-identify, but you've seen them visibly, they say to you, you can make an educated guess about what that person is because you must fill out this form for them. The most ridiculous thing ever. Huh. So you now have people looking at somebody, and because their last name is Herrera, oh, well, they must be Hispanic. How long have they been?
How wrong is that?
Long?
Right.
They've been Caribbean, they've been Portuguese, they've been Caucasian, they've been a mix of two things. And here it is, but this is the government telling us that this is what you can do. This is not people just dreaming this up. So on some level, it's like you have to kind of pull back from the companies a slight bit and give them, you know, a little bit of breathing space and say, hey, the system sucks. Somebody's got to fix the system. If you're telling people to do this, and that's what they have to do, it kind of perpetuates the problem.
So,
you can tell we could talk about this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I need to cut it short because it's getting late. I think we're all getting tired. I think these have been great conversations around diversity, really honest ones like the title of the series. And I think it's great that you guys are willing to come on to a webinar like this and have real conversations that I think resonate with a lot of people, because it is just really all about being people and being good at your job. And we need to get that more in the workforce, just like what you guys are talking about. And I hope that by having these conversations, we can start to make others think about it that way as well. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, for being here tonight on the College Recruiter webinar, and having these honest conversations on diversity. I want to thank Janine Truitt of Talent Think Innovations and the Aristocracy of HR, Zarina of HR at Twitter. You can find her, CZARINAOFHR. Thanks, Janine, for being with us.
Thanks, Faith.
And Steve, I want to thank Steve Levy as well of Recruiting Inferno Consulting. He could be reached on Twitter at Levy Recruits, LEVYRECRUITS. Thanks, Steve, for being with us as well. I hope that we can continue another series sometime soon. Thanks a lot, you guys. Have a great night.
Good night, all.
Bye.